What intention does he express in a letter to Titus 3:12? About what time did the first persecution of the Christians at Rome begin? Under what emperor? His character and the character of the persecution. How long after this was Paul arrested? Where? What were the charges against him? Was he convicted on the former? How does he describe the outcome to Timothy? What was the second charge? Of what Roman law was it a violation? Had this law been practically operative? What was the result? When and how was he put to death? What letters did he write during this period? The epistle to Philemon. Who was Philemon, and where did he live? Who was Onesimus? Where and when was the letter written? And what was the situation of the writer? Give some account of the contents. The epistle to the Ephesians. When and where was this written? What doubt is there concerning the destination? What are some of the grounds of this doubt? What other epistle contains almost the entire substance of this? The analysis of the epistle. The first part, 1 through 14 of 1. After the salutation, what are some of the several things in general for which the writer blesses God? The second part, 1 verse 15 to 2 verse 10. What does he thank God for? And for what does he pray concerning those to whom he writes? 15 through 19. What does he say of the exaltation of Christ? 20 through 23. What change had taken place in them, and how had this been effected? Chapter 2, 1 through 10. The third part. Chapter 2, 11 through 3, 21. What had been their former estate? Verses 11 and 12 of chapter 2, right? Their present condition. Verse 13. What had Christ done for both the Jews and the other nations? And in what relation did it place both? 14 through 18. What high privilege was thus theirs? 19. What figure is used? 20 through 22. What was the great new revelation concerning this, and to whom had it been specially committed? 3, 2 through 12. What grand spiritual gifts does he invoke for them? 13 through 21. The fourth part. Chapter 4, 1 through 16. What exhortation does he give? 1 through 3. How is the unity enjoined described? Verses 4 through 6. What diversity consists with this unity? Verses 7 through 15. What beautiful figure illustrates this? 16. I'll give you a clue. It's not Aphrodite, but fifth part, 4, 17 through 5, 21. What was their former state? What radical change? And how figured? 17 through 24. What particular sins are they to put away? 25 through 31. All of them, right? But, certainly people have individual issues, right? What disposition is enjoined? Verse 32 through 5, through chapter 5, verse 2. What contrast between the light and the darkness of the soul? Verses 8, 11 through 14. What are some of the special exhortations? 15 through 21. The sixth part is verse 22 of chapter 5 to verse 9 of chapter 6. What kind of relations are here referred to? Mention some of the duties enjoined. The seventh part, 6, 10 through 24. What fine figure is here used to illustrate the Christian character and calling? What are the principal points? 23, the propagation of the gospel. 23, the last letters concluded. Philippians, 1 Timothy, Titus, 2 Timothy. The epistle to the Colossians is admitted as being similar to that of the Ephesians. And what was the name of the letter? I think there was a couple letters that weren't included in the Bible, and why was that? Anyways, the epistle to the Philippians. Where was Philippi? What have we in the history concerning the first preaching of the gospel there? By the history, they mean sacred history. What disposition had the Philippians manifested towards Paul? Chapter 4, 14 through 13. What disposition does he manifest towards them? Chapter 1, verse 1 through 7. How does he describe his present condition? 12 and 13. How had his persecution and imprisonment on the whole affected his usefulness? 14 through 20. What opposite desires does he express? 21 through 24. To what does he exhort his brethren? 27 and 28. See also chapter 2, 1 through 4. What beautiful presentation of the example of Christ is given? 5 through 8. What was Paul's situation as regards companionship when he wrote? 19 through 22. What account does he give of his temporal advantages and formal spiritual defects, and how does he regard them? 3, 4 through 10. What allusions are made to the kindness of the Philippians? Chapter 4, 10 through 16. The first epistle to Timothy. When and where written? Introduction to 22. Where was Timothy, and what was his office? For what purpose had he been appointed to this office? Chapter 1, verses 3 and 4, the condition of the Ephesian church at this time, 4, 6, and 7, an introduction. What instance of church discipline and excommunication? 19 and 20. Instructions concerning public assemblies of Christians. Chapter 2, what prayers are to be especially offered. Instructions concerning women in public. Why was this appropriate to that time and place? What church officers are mentioned, and what character are they severally to have? Chapter 3. What remarkable statement of the character of the gospel? 16. What prophecy of evils in latter times? 4, 1 through 3. How is Timothy to prove himself a good minister? 4 through 7. The advantage of genuine religion. Verse 8. As a young man, what is Timothy advised to do? Verses 12 through 16. What wholesome directions to servants? Chapter 6, 1 and 2. What is said of contentment? 6 through 8. Danger of avarice? 9, 10, 17. The better way? 18, 19. What grand ascription to Christ? 13 through 16. Epistle to Titus, where written. What happened to Paul soon after? Introduction to 22. Where was Titus, and holding what office? What evils were in the churches there, and what vices does Paul attribute to the Cretans generally? 1, 10 through 13. What are some of the general directions to Titus concerning the management of affairs, and concerning what particular classes? 13, 14. Chapter 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through 8. 9, 10, 15. For what reasons? 11 through 14. What other practical injunctions are given? 3, 1 and 2. What experience is cited? 3 through 7. What indication does the apostle give of his situation and intention? Verses 12 and 13. The second epistle to Timothy, where and when written? How long before the apostle's martyrdom? How does he address Timothy? Chapter 1, 2. What is his feeling towards him? 3 through 7. What is the condition of Paul and his bearing in it? 11 and 12, what is evident concerning some who should have stood by him? Verse 15, did this include all his friends? 16 through 18. What are some of the special exhortations to Timothy? 2, 3, 14, 15. 22 and 23, what errors of some teachers does he depreciate? Verses 16 through 18. What future evils are predicted? Chapter 3, 1 through 5. Examples of perverse teachers, 6 through 9. How does he set forth his own example and the natural consequences, 10 through 12. Value of the scriptures, verses 14 through 17. And that is far better than 1 Corinthians 13. Those verses are a lot better in terms of guidance. And you can judge the rest of the Bible by those verses, so. Well, maybe that's a maxim, but consider the rest of what the Bible has to say when you're through those verses. Give that a try. The final charge, chapter 4, 1 through 5, Paul's grand summing up and glorious expectations, 6 through 8. How do you think at this point Paul, a prisoner and soon to die as a criminal, would have answered the question, is life worth living? What was evidently his condition in respect to many of his friends? Verse 9 through 11, his confidence, nevertheless, verse 17 and 18.